Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown. And today I'm going to go into what is a psychopath? How do we label someone a psychopath? Who gets to label someone a psychopath? When is a person not a psychopath? And you're going to look behind me and you're going to say, okay, this guy, Pater Madsen, was convicted of killing Kim Wall brutally. So is he a psychopath or isn't he? And I'm getting into this for a reason, because I ran across a video which kind of blew me away. Let me show you which video it is. And then I'm going to get to this case. I'm going to go to a lot of the issues about what kind of guy he was, and does he represent a psychopath, or was it an out-of-character crime? What was it? But the reason I got to this was because of this man, and he is Dr. Soham Das. He is a forensic psychiatrist, and he says very strongly, I have beef with Dr. Grande, who has his own channel. And he's got beef over and over again with Dr. Grande because he thinks Dr. Grande is diagnosing people wrongly and is completely off in his diagnoses, and therefore, and he has no right to do it because he's not a psychiatrist. He says he's misrepresenting his background. And so I find all this quite interesting. And the case which he goes off on Dr. Grande is this. So Dr. Grande did this show, Chris Watts, Psychopathy, Narcissism, Rage, Infidelity, and Murder. And he says, was he impulsive or calculating? And so he does indeed think that Chris Watts is a psychopath. And so in return, Dr. Das says, is Dr. Grande wrong about Chris Watts? And he thinks he is wrong. And he thinks that Dr. Grande is labeling him a psychopath when he knows not how to label. And he says, absolutely, Chris Watts is not a psychopath. Now I got a beef with Dr. Das. And he's going to have two sides of beef when it comes down to both of us, because he's going to say, I don't have the right to diagnose and label people either. So this time, Dr. Grande and I are in that same boat. But I'm like, how does he come to a conclusion he's not a psychopath? So that's where this little study came. And so I'm going to take you through some of his viewpoints on what a psychopath is and what a supposed sociopath is and what a psychopath is not, and so on, some of his own words. And I want to bring in, for this reason, this very fascinating case of the murder of Kim Wall by him. Because a lot of what Dr. Das is saying, he's going to say, if Chris Watts is not a psychopath, neither is Pater Madsen. So, and is that possible considering what he did to her? All right, so now let me get ready. By the way, I want to welcome everybody who's in the chat room. Anybody new rolled in? Well, Harper's already got an opinion, see? And I respect that people can have an opinion who haven't necessarily been in the field. But I don't know, Harper, you may have been in the field. Most definitely a psychopath. No remorse over the crime, very grandiose personality. Said he would either go down in history as the greatest hero or greatest criminal. Yeah, he did say that. Very, very true. And hi, Linda's rolled in. All right, so if you'd like to be in the chat room before I get going with all of this, please do click the link below for Patreon. It's $5 a month. And it helps support an educational channel. And you can come to 2 live shows a week, a case show like this. And also during the week, I have a hangout where I do news and questions about different cases. So it's 8 shows a month. However, if you don't want to join Patreon, no worries. Once a live show is done, I put everything up public. So please do subscribe to the channel. Check out my playlists and see what I've got on there for all the many, many cases I have done. Okay, let's get to this. Now, before I start, I want to talk about what I accessed as far as information. Now, there is on the submarine, what they call the submarine murder case. There's a documentary called Into the Deep on Netflix. It has a pretty low rating. I think it was like over IMDb. It was like 6%. I mean, whatever it is, six. Not he's not nobody's. He didn't. This documentary didn't get 10. 10. No, it's getting 1. It's getting 4. It's getting. A lot of people hated this documentary, and I think it's one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. I would rate it a 10.5. Why are people so not loving this documentary? Well, because they wanted to hear more about the crime itself, more about the gruesomeness of the crime, which they barely touch on in there. They tell you what it was, but that's it. And they don't go heavily into the victimology and the victim herself, Kim Wall. And a lot of people found that offensive because Kim Wall was brutally murdered by and this horrible crime. But the reason they don't is because, sadly, Kim Wall was an accidental victim, shall we say. He would have chosen anybody who happened to be at the place and time. And I'm going to get into who he probably would have killed if the timing had been different. So Kim Wall was not it wasn't like he chose her. Of course, a lot of times when you're a victim of a serial killer, sexual homicide type thing, they don't care about who you are anyway. So what happens is you have a poor person who ends up being the victim of a psychopath, in my opinion, a violent psychopath, a sexual psychopath. And it's really bad luck most of the time. But they're not chosen. It's not like there's a relationship or anything going on. So although absolutely what happened to Kim Wall was dreadful, the point of the show was and it was fascinating because the show was actually shot before. There was somebody actually doing a documentary on Peter because he has a fascinating story, a history. He an entrepreneur. He visualized incredible things. He made submarines and rockets, and people loved him. And what the heck? And then so you actually see the filming prior to this going down. And when Kim Wall goes missing, they're filming at that time, the people who know him, and it's like in real time. It's not acted, it's in real time because they were filming something anyway, and this happened in the midst of it. And then so it goes on with all the issues surrounding Pater Madsen as far as his behaviors go and what happened before, during, and after, and what the people around him saw happening and what they thought. And it's absolutely fascinating. So it's rare that you get something that isn't a traditional true crime thing. I was going to say piece of crap, but a lot of times it is. It's like, oh, here we go again. And there's nothing really interesting. They're not even doing good research. They're just chucking stuff together. So I have a lot of true crime documentaries I'm not fond of. I do have some I really like. This was exceptional. So I think most people who watched it weren't expecting what they were getting, so they didn't like it. And I guess if you're not getting what you want, yeah, you're going to be like surprised. So this is amazing. And if you're watching the show later and you haven't seen this, if you're not here for the live, just stop me right now. Go watch this. If you watch this before what I'm going to tell you, it'll be even more interesting. That's all I want to let you know. And then come back and see what I'm going to bring out about this. Now, over here, I read some of the book of Dr. Soham Das. And he's a British psychiatrist, British forensic psychiatrist. He has his own channel, and the channel is called Psych for Sore Minds. This is him. He likes to wear tight shirts. I'm not sure what that is. I think he thinks he's got a great body, so he's always got these really tight shirts on. Everybody keeps saying, get a bigger shirt. But he's like, no. Anyway, you'll notice that. So he has a channel. And he doesn't appreciate, I think, Dr. Grande's channel. And one of the things just to point out, Dr. Grande, when he did this thing on Chris Watts, he got over 2 million views. And when Dr. Das did his, he got 23,000. Hey, I I can commiserate with Dr. Das in that, yes, I think I have a channel that should get more recognition, but that's the way it is. I mean, some people have a gift for doing something that's very popular with the audience, and a lot of times I don't dislike their channel. That some I think are grifters. I don't think Dr. Brown is that. I think he found a good formula. He has some. I don't always agree with him, and people know that, but a lot of times I think he's pretty funny. He's got a very dry sense of humor. I enjoy it, and I find him interesting. And he does a shorter thing. I don't think he does nearly as much research as I do on cases. He's not a criminal profiler or a detective, so I think sometimes his ability to analyze a crime is a little weak. But I still think he's it's a fun channel to watch. And people really like it, and he did find a formula that works extremely well. And the dude, I want to say this: he had a channel for a really long time and it was teaching counseling. He struggled, I think, probably I can't remember, I think it was like 7 years of doing all these. He's done tons of videos on helping people do counseling. And I'm sure he did that mostly because he wanted to educate people. This is way before true crime became so popular on YouTube. And I think after he did that for a good many years, he realized that true crime was kind of something he might work for him. And, he paid his dues doing real educational stuff, you know what I mean? And I think he tried it out and it worked for him. So dude's rich now. What can I say? But I'm not offended by Dr. Grande. I am kind of offended by Dr. Das. So as I say, he's going to have a beef with me when I'm finished with this little bit here. But I did get his book in 2 minds. I didn't find it highly readable. Just me. Again, a lot of people hate my books, so so it's just a personal thing. Maybe it's because I've been in the field so long. It's not, a lot of the stuff isn't new and exciting to me. I find it a little hard to follow a lot of what he says. It kind of like he likes to throw in a lot of. I don't know. He thinks he's funny. I don't think he's as funny as he thinks he's funny, but then again, some people think I'm pretty funny, and other people say they don't think I'm funny at all. That's the way the world works, It's like some love you, some don't. So there we go. But I have a real issue with what I consider a psychiatrist who doesn't seem to know what a psychopath is. So I'm going to get into that. But let's go to just the basics of this case, and then I'm going to go, let's see where I want to start. It's a little confusing because I know some people are just here for this case, but let me say this: he did it. Okay, so I'll give you the short rendition because it's more about the psychology that I'm interested in more than the actual what happened. And that's the same thing was true with the documentary. Why people didn't like it? So, well, you didn't even get into all those. I'm not either. But anyway, Kim Wall. This is called the submarine case by many people. I am reading from Wikipedia. She boarded the midget submarine UC3 in Denmark for a prearranged interview with the owner, a Danish entrepreneur, Pater Madsen. And then she was reported missing. The Nautilus, that's his little sub here, didn't return to the harbor, and it was reported missing. The submarine was found sunken the following morning, and Madsen was arrested upon being rescued from the water. Why was he? Well, she wasn't there. She wasn't with him. And then they brought up the submarine, and she wasn't in there either. He said that he had dropped her off on land and then went back out. Well, she was never seen after she was supposedly dropped off on land. It was really sad because she was like engaged and she was about to go to Beijing. She was like a really cool person. I think she's a really cool person. Here she is, on one of her trips around the world doing her reporting. And then here she is. This is the last sighting of her. She's on there with Pater Madsen. Bye. And she actually sends her fiance a text, which is just incredibly heartbreaking. This is it. I'm still alive, by the way, but going down now. See you later. I'm sorry. I love you. So I added the see you later in there. And he didn't see her later. That's the problem. So I don't know why I added that in. Anyway, that was the last time she was seen. She never she was found in pieces. In pieces. A torso showed up and on the beach, and then arms and legs and a head in a bag, and the torso had many stab wounds in the genital region, and he originally claimed when they arrested him, because like, hey, you're full of it, something. What did you do to this girl? And he said, oh, she was hit in the head with I think what did he claim? It was let's see, what was his first claim? He kept changing his story, which he says you do when people, when new evidence is presented, you have to change your story. He actually said that, which is what psychopaths do all the time. So he admitted to dumping her body at sea. He claimed that she died after being struck on the head by the submarine's hatch cover. So in other words, this hatch cover hit her in the head. She died, and he's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So that's why he dumped her body at sea and chopped her up inside the submarine, put her in different parts, weighted everything down so it wouldn't float to the surface. He didn't think of maybe he should just take the submarine back to land and then call for help, and then the evidence would be that that was what happened. Of course, when they finally did the autopsy, they found absolutely no blunt trauma to her head at all. So that was a big lie. But that was his original claim, that he basically, after she got hit on the head, he kind of panicked and stuff. So then they went and looked at his computer, and the computer showed women being murdered, and he looked at videos of decapitation and practiced asphyxiation sex. Okay. There was semen on her underclothing secured from him, under him, not her. So the postmortem, no sign of blunt trauma, did not determine a cause of death. So it's, considering the situation. But then after his story, well, when they said there was no blunt trauma to her head, he went, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, it was poisonous exhaust gases. While he was on deck, you see, she got suffocated by poisonous gases. But then when they did the examination, they found no signs of exhaust gases in her lungs. So that didn't work so well. He was finally charged with murder, indecent handling of a corpse. Originally, he was hoping he was just going to get indecent handling of a corpse, saying that, well, when she died accidentally on board, I did do something to her corpse, but that, it was just because I freaked. He's hoping to get 6 months. Well, that didn't work out because they accused him of torturing her before killing her by cutting her throat or strangling her. He did get convicted, and he is in prison today, at least now. Let's see, that was in 2018. He appealed. They upheld the sentence. He did try to escape. He tried in 2020 to escape prison. He briefly escaped prison. He threatened a prison employee, said to have been a psychologist. So that'll add into the story here. And then they found him and brought him back. He got 500 meters away. He's not really good at escaping prison. I want to show this thing that they put up at the end of the show, which I thought was kind of interesting. Where'd it go? Oh, here it is. Okay, so Pater Madsen was found guilty of premeditated murder and is currently serving out a life sentence in Denmark, which sometimes is only 16 years, which is frightening. During the trial, 10 interns and volunteers at RML testified against him. And all these people who thought he was like super great and wonderful, and they worked they volunteered, they built all these things with him. He's actually a fascinating person. Let me show you here. Here's a TED talk he was giving. He always smiled a lot. Look at him. He's with this. They're filming here, and he's like, look what I've made. And everybody's like, oh my God, we love him. We love Peter. We love Peter. Until they found out what he did. And that's what these interns and everybody who worked with him looks like afterwards. They are absolutely just blown away, stunned. They cannot believe it. It's just beyond comprehension for them. But because they started looking back in time, I'm going to get into what Peter was like prior, because this is where I think the really important part comes. So I'm going to get into the psychopathy issues. So they testified against him. In its ruling, the court stated that footage used in this film proved instrumental in his conviction, which is kind of neat. You know what I mean? Because they had this film, they were filming this before he committed this crime. Right in the midst of their filming, he committed the crime. And one of the fascinating things about it is, and many people will ask, is that, he's filming and she gets on board. Remember, she got actually on board his, here she is. She gets on board, being filmed, getting on board his submarine and never comes back. If you're going to do something to somebody, that is not the brightest thing in the world to do. In the midst of doing a documentary, it's phenomenal. So it's a horrific case. I mean, because I think first of all, what happened to her was just appalling. It was a sexual homicide of the nth degree, absolutely despicable. And, but done by a guy no one suspected. And this is what I want to get into with the whole issue with Das, Dr. Das, and his viewpoints that certain people are not psychopaths. You kill your wife, your children. Chris Watts, as Dr. Grande said, Dr. Grande thought he was a psychopath. I'm pretty sure Dr. Grande would think Pater Madsen was a psychopath. But for some reason, Dr. Das thinks that Chris Watts had a bad hair day. And if that's true, maybe Pater Madsen had a bad hair day too. He was a great guy. And he was like so willing to like come on down to my submarine and I'll show you around and show you how cool it is. 2-hour cruise underneath the water. And for some reason, as a psychopath often will say, for some reason, I decided to torture and murder her. As we all might think while we're taking a submarine ride. Okay. But not a psychopath, just a bad hair day. So that's the basic case, but I'm going to get back to more about this case. You're going to see some amazing things that Pater Madsen said prior to the murder. And I just think it's just mind-blowing, really. So hang in there because I'm going to go through the Dr. Das thing. I want to go through a lot of things with psychopathy and then go back to this case. And I want you to say, did he exhibit psychopathy prior to the murder? Because remember, he was well loved. He was super successful. He was brilliant. And some people think that a psychopath can't be that, or is it a sociopath? Psychopath, sociopath, because we all have to have these different little labels and we have to all agree on them, except that we don't. All right. So I'm going to check the comments and I'm going to go to the next portion of this whole issue of psychopathy. Oh dear, Christoph is now speaking in a language I cannot read. So I don't know. Quick, can you read? Is that a private conversation? Because I can't read. I'm messing with Christoph. This is a good point. Harper says his self-esteem is so high, he thought he would get away with it. Sounded like a game to him that he thought he would win. Yes and possibly no. Because one of the supposed, and I say supposed because this is where we run into trouble, traits of a psychopath is impulsivity. Now, many of us can be impulsive under certain circumstances. And was he impulsive in this, or did he think he could get away with it? And there is some evidence that this was a pre-planned, premeditated murder. But still, was he impulsive in the sense that he didn't have to do this victim at this particular point in time? Is he just so arrogant that he just goes ahead and thinks, yeah, they'll never catch me, even if I do the most incredible stuff? And that's a good question. So that's an interesting point. Oh, this is such a true thing. Just Lynn, thank you for pointing this out. She would think she was safe as people knew where she was and who she was with. Can you pick a less high-risk victim? When people say somebody's high-risk or low-risk victim, I'm sorry, low-risk victim. Did I say high-risk? Low-risk victim. A high-risk victim is someone like, let's say a woman's involved in prostitution. She's on the street. Guy rolls up in a car, and if he's not holding up an axe, and he says, "How much?" And she says, she's kind of, got a crack problem there, cracko. And so he says, "How much?" She says, $20. He says, "All right." She jumps in a car with a complete stranger who can take her to any location. He's a John. She doesn't know if he's safe or not, but she'll go anywhere because she needs to support a drug habit. She's a very, very high risk victim. She, on the other hand, was about as low risk as you can get. She was doing she was involved in her profession. She had asked for a specific interview with Pater Madsen. It was in writing that she had wanted this interview. So it was known who she was going to be with. She went with a famous person who did TED Talks. She was videotaped getting into the darn submarine. There's no way she would have any clue that this guy would do something to her in a 2-hour cruise, what everybody knew they were on together. You can't get a more safe circumstance that you would have. And of course, he worked with all these people who just thought he was the best, and he's smiling and everybody loves him and they're doing documentaries on him. There's no way in God's earth, she thought when she got on the submarine, that if you had to make a bet, if anybody had to make a bet, whether she would come back alive or not, whether she would be murdered. I mean, that would be a bet I wish I had made, thinking, oh no, she's not going to come back. I would be a wealthy woman right now, because as a profiler, I would say there's no way in God's earth this guy would kill her. This is ridiculous. He's a well-known guy. He's got no criminal background. He's doing a documentary. They see him with her. There's no way on earth. I mean, if he were going to kill somebody, if he was going to commit a sexual homicide, he would find a way to do that secretly and all that stuff behind the scenes. There's no way he's going to kill her. I would have lost that bet. I wish I would have bet the other way, but I would have lost that bet because just no way. But there, obviously it happened. So she absolutely was not a high-risk victim, and absolutely there's just no way that should have happened. It's crazy. And that's why it's such a fascinating case, because nobody can believe that guy, even if the guy was a psychopath, which I think he is a psychopath, even if he is a psychopath, and even if he had fetishes, and even if he was watching murder videos, brutal murder videos, like snuff films and stuff, even if he was all into that, totally into that, you still wouldn't think he would kill somebody on his own submarine. What an idiot. But yeah, that is a scary guy. I'll go with that. Cheryl Smith. I watched a documentary. It was a great piece, though sad. I'm glad you liked it. I thought it was brilliant and just so interesting and so different than what even I expected, but in a good way. I thought it was amazing. Harper says, I think it was so good because they didn't start filming with the intent of making a crime documentary. No, that is actually absolutely true. They were actually they thought this guy was really cool. All the neat things he was doing, they were all about the excitement of the developing these rockets and submarines and all these people working together. It was like a super positive thing that just completely went the other direction. So no, weren't set out to make a crime documentary at all. I think that's just amazingly fascinating. So you just don't get a documentary that's as interesting as this. And I wish people realized how incredible it was. So let me get to the psychopathy issue. All right. The reason I find this so important is as a criminal profiler, which of course, I think Dr. Das would say I'm not really one, and so will the FBI, because he and the FBI want to corner their markets, which I totally disagree with. There's this concept that, which a lot of people who get into certain parts of academia believe that only they can be what they are. I had that problem with Cleopatra. If you check my playlist, I have a whole 10-part series on the murder of Cleopatra, which is a book I also wrote, which you can find at Amazon and every place else, I think. maybe it's just Amazon. Been a while. But I wrote a book after I did the Discovery documentary. I did a Discovery documentary called The Mysterious Death of Cleopatra. And I got rid of the snake because the snake has always been part of the Cleopatra myth that she committed suicide by using a cobra, which is ludicrous because it doesn't work that way. And so I broke it down with all the evidence, all the scientific evidence, the architectural evidence, the behavioral evidence. I broke it all down. A very successful documentary. As a matter of fact, it was so successful that every academic and Egyptologist has eliminated the snake from the death of Cleopatra, although I get no credit for it. They just ignored me because I wasn't one of the group, wasn't one of them. And so now, and then I write the book because I said I believe she was murdered. She didn't commit suicide either. So I did a book called The Murder of Cleopatra. And then I've done it for YouTube because I just thought, a lot of people don't see the book, so let me do it here on YouTube. So you can go check that out. But recently, for example, I just got a call from Discovery Channel, wanted me to come in and work for free, of course. And for this little bit about the murder of Cleopatra, they wanted me to come to California, and they didn't want to pay me, and they want me to fly coach. I'm just like, it's like, it's a lot of work, and I really don't want to do it. If you're making money, I would kind of like you to pay me. Well, anyway, they dumped me. So when you see that show, it'll be some other person claiming they'll use my material, but they'll claim it was theirs. Anyway, that's the way it works. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on in academia, in television, where people who they think they corner the market for whatever reasons. And then the FBI, for example, says they are the only profilers allowed out there. And I don't like their profiling methodology. I've been against their profiling methodology for years. Not all the profilers I'm against and that are FBI profilers, but I don't like the methodology. I don't think it's scientific. But they're against anybody who isn't FBI. So the same thing happens with psychology and psychiatry, is that those who get a doctorate or MD, they become a psychiatrist, especially a forensic psychiatrist. They seem to think that they have the corner on the market, and everybody else is a loser. They're only a psychologist. They don't have my level of expertise, or they're only what he says about Dr. Grande, which he says he misrepresents himself, blah, blah, blah. He does not misrepresent himself. He is, I want to pull up his CV here. Dr. Grande. Okay. Dr. Grande is a professional counselor, educator, and content creator who specializes in personality disorders, addiction recovery from trauma, psychopathology, and assessment. So he is a licensed professional counselor of mental health and a licensed chemical dependency professional in the state of Delaware, and is a national certified counselor. He holds a Master's of Science in Community Counseling from Wilmington University and a PhD in Counselor Education and Supervision from Regent University. And he was also associate professor in Wilmington University's accredited clinical mental health counseling program, and so on and so forth. What is the difference then between him and Dr. Das? All right. So we have Dr. Das here. We got Dr. Grande here. All right. Dr. Das is a psychiatrist. Dr. Grande is a PhD in counseling, and mental health counseling. Now, what is the basic difference? I'm looking at this thing. It says, what's the main difference? Is mental health counselors and psychologists / psychiatrists both work in the mental health field, but the roles differ in educational requirements and job responsibilities. So, but they all have educational requirements. And this is what drives me nuts. Both of them studied psychology. That's a requirement for whatever you are. You have to study psychology. As a criminal profiler, not associated with the FBI, independent, I studied psychology because I don't believe that criminal profiling is mostly about psychology. I think it's mostly about crime scene evidence and analysis. That's the major part of it. But you do have to also understand the criminal mind and how they work. And then when you're looking for people, who should you be looking for, so on and so forth. So yes, I studied psychology. I studied and studied and studied psychology. Now, mind you, I was independent, and I could not, when I was trying to get a degree, I looked into studying psychology, but I found most of it was not something I found useful to the field of criminal profiling. Much of it was about treatment. And I'm like, well, I'm studying, for my field, most of the people I'm dealing with are homicidal people. They're murderers, which means to me, almost all of them are psychopaths. And I stand by that, though people say, oh, most of them aren't. No, most of them are. If you can brutally and premeditatedly kill people, you're probably a psychopath. So I'm like, I need to know what a psychopath is. I need to know the behaviors of a psychopath. I don't even know how to treat them, which, by the way, Dr. Das, who claims he treats psychopaths, get out of here. You can't treat a psychopath. Psychopaths aren't amenable to treatment. And one of the best books ever written, Inside the Criminal Mind by Dr. Stanton Samanow, PhD, okay. So Dr. Samanow is a clinical psychologist, which I guess isn't as good as a psychiatrist, right? Anyway, he worked at a St. Elizabeth's Hospital in D.C. Brilliant, brilliant book, Inside the Criminal Mind. I can't recommend it. I can't recommend it enough. I can't recommend it. I can't recommend it enough. It was one of my absolute favorite books. He goes into psychopathy, and he goes into his experiences with psychopaths, and you realize when he first started in the field, he was so naive. He was like manipulated all over the place, but then he got wise. And one of the things he says is, you can't fix a psychopath, because a psychopath is a psychopath. Nothing you're going to do is going to make him not a psychopath. The only thing you can do you can't treat them. What you can do is help them determine better pathways for themselves to manipulate people in a less terrible way, because it's beneficial to them. You have to make sure they think they don't care about other people. To make it beneficial to you, okay, here's how I think it would be better. But other than that, you can't treat them. If you say you can treat psychopaths, you're full of it. You can't. Okay, so that's a problem I have right there. So anyway, I studied tons of stuff, by the way, about psychopathy, book after book after book, famous writers. And I want to point this out about education. When I went to get my criminal justice degree and a master's from Boston University, the requirements to get that master's degree and the amount of books I had to read were so much less than what I'd done on my own. I read 400 books on my own. And when I read the books, I paid attention to what they were saying. And when they recommended another particular person, I went and read what they had to say too. And so I went through so many different psychologists and psychiatrists and profiling books and detective stuff. I mean, I just went through evidence, DNA, and every kind of forensic thing possible. 400 freaking books. When I went to a master's program, I had to read 9. But I got a master's degree. And a lot of times what I was being taught was simplistic to me. Just because you're in a program with a person who is teaching, you can get a great professor, or you can get one that's kind of useless. And I've had great professors and I've had useless professors. Just like you read a great book or you have a useless book. A lot of that is what you have to pay attention and you have to learn, regardless of how the hell you're learning. And I went to a lot of seminars too, so that I could learn from detectives and other people. So I was self-trained. I don't shy away from that. And then I did get my criminal justice degree, which I think is fairly worthless, but looks better on the back of a book than none. So this guy's like, oh my God, this guy's a completely useless tool because he's not a forensic psychiatrist. I am. And therefore he doesn't know what I know. God, get out of here. You both studied psychology. You both know stuff. And it's more a matter of how you're able to apply it in the real world. And I think he applies it quite well. I'm not so sure I like the way you apply it at all, because if you think that Chris Watts isn't a psychopath, you got problems. And I'm not sure I would send anybody to you for any kind of help. But I think you do work in I think you probably do end up in court on the behalf of the defense. And you also work in mental institutions, which have to try to prove that you can cure people or help them even if you can't. That's kind of the job, otherwise why are you even bothering, So anyway, so there's learning about psychopathy. It's tricky too. So let me show you what he says. Let's see, where do I want to go with this? I want to show you a couple other things. When we talk about psychopathy, first of all, nobody seems to agree on what the hell the term is. So when he decides he can give you a definition, not so much. All right. So the first question we always have is a DSM-V, which is, this is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, and it's now, I think, a number 5. Although, so what they do is this from the Psychiatric Association. I think it's the American Psychiatric, maybe APA, I'm not sure. But they develop a book which has a ton of labels, diagnoses. And then every so often, when they go to the new edition, they wipe out a bunch of diagnoses and add a bunch of diagnoses. So you see, it's an ever-changing field. So for you to say absolutely this is true is not true, and you should know that. So here we have here. So psychopathy is that even in the DSM-5, sorry. The DSM-5 does not include a diagnosis for antisocial personality disorder, AS. Oh, no, sorry. It does include a diagnosis for antisocial personality disorder, ASPD. That's the one they're using right now. Psychopathy is sometimes used as a term to describe individuals who exhibit certain characteristics associated with ASPD, such as lack of empathy, remorse, and boldness. However, psychopathy itself is not a formal diagnostic category. Oh my God, has this changed over the years? They keep changing things. And one of the questions one would have is why aren't they? And I thought this person's answer was pretty good. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, did they take that away from me? Hold on a second. Okay, let me find it because. Hold on. Seriously, don't come back. It vanished on me because it came out of, I think it came out of a Quora. I'm not sure. Hold on one second. One second. I want to put this back in here because it has to, oh, maybe I put it over here. Oh, here it is. Okay. Sorry. This person answered this. I thought it was a very good answer. This is on Quora. If psychopath is a personality disorder, why is it not in the DSM-5 and the ICD-10, which I'm not sure what that is? A few reasons. One is some of the hallmarks of being a psychopath, such as callousness, are exceedingly hard for a clinician to accurately assess, especially when you're when you're in a facility and that person is in the facility with you. You have no clue about their entire background, and they're also playing you because that's what psychopaths do the best, because they want to get you on their side. They want to get whatever they want, they're going to manipulate you to get. So it's very hard when you're in that circumstance to necessarily get the background you need. Another one is that the DSM is specifically for clinical settings, and in the field trial, the results do not suggest that the items unique to the PCLR, which is Psychopathic Checklist, which was done by Robert Hare originally. It's like it says, well, the problem with that is it's helpful for diagnosing psychopathy, but it also stigmatizes people. So they don't quite use the psychopathy term anymore. They do it's antisocial personality disorder, which so what? That's not stigmatizing. This is the stuff that goes on. So how does this change over time? Now, one of the earlier books is a book called The Mask of Sanity by Harvey Cleckley. Yeah, and that's one of the most famous books ever. And interestingly enough, for some reason, my book is upside down inside. So go figure how they put the book on wrongly, but they did. All right. So Cleckley says this. In a 1952 revision of the psychiatric nomenclature, the term psychopathic personality was officially replaced by sociopathic personality. I have always had an issue with this. I go with psychopathy. I don't go with sociopath. I just don't, because I think it's just a fancy word for psychopath, which is meaningless to me. But he has two different versions of it, which he confuses, which makes no sense. He gives a definition of each and then he reverses it. So go figure. I'm going to get into that. Subsequently, the informal term, he does say it's informal as opposed to the psychopath, which is more formal, even though it's not actually a diagnosis. Frequently, the informal term sociopath was often used along with the older and more familiar psychopath to designate a large group of seriously disabled people with personality disorders. Then they changed it in 1968. They changed it again to, okay, so sociopathic personality was replaced by personality disorder, antisocial type. And then they changed it again. Okay. So he's already saying they're changing this when they feel like changing this. Okay. So this book. Now, you can have other people who wrote antisocial behavior. Now, this one, he is big on, I don't know if you can see this, he's big on sociopath. He likes the term sociopath. And this guy is Benjamin Woolman, PhD. He's a psychologist. And he says this. He talks about antisocial. He talks about the DSM-5. And no, this is the third edition. So this is kind of old book. And he talks about antisocial personality disorder. And then he goes on right on to say sociopaths, blah, 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 blah. So he likes to he takes that antisocial and turns it into sociopaths. So that's another one. Now, okay, let's go to this, the psychopathy checklist, which is in here, which oddly is the psychopathy checklist, not the sociopathy checklist, and not the antisocial personality disorder checklist. It's a psychopathy checklist. And so he has the key symptoms, and this is Robert Hare, who is famous for this book, and he is a psychologist, not a psychiatrist, Dr. Das. Oh my God, I guess he's not educated enough. But anyway, so the basic things he talks about, the key symptoms. I'm going to give you these first. I'm going to go to his version. Emotion. There's more. There's like about 20 of them, but here's the key symptoms, supposedly. Emotional, interpersonal stuff. Glib and superficial. Egocentric and grandiose. Lack of remorse or guilt. Lack of empathy. Deceitful and manipulative, and shallow emotions. Yes, I think all psychopaths, for the most part, they absolutely have no empathy, no remorse, no guilt. They are manipulative. They do lie like dogs. They have shallow emotions because they don't feel anything for other people except for themselves. Now, the egocentric and grandiose, in other words, they think way better of themselves than they need to. Although when you come down to Pater Madsen, sometimes they have a good reason to think well of themselves. So you got to be real careful about the grandiose thing, because sometimes people are actually very successful. And I think that's true for psychopaths too, that some of them can be very successful. And whether they become murderers is a whole nother matter, but they can be very successful. But on the other hand, very successful people aren't necessarily psychopathic just because if they've had grandiose thinking, but the grandiose thinking has all worked out. You know what I mean? They've done what they said they were going to do. I think Pater Madsen was brilliant. And he said he could do these things, and he did do these things. So if he had a slightly grandiose idea of what he could accomplish, well, he did. So maybe it wasn't so grandiose. You know what I mean? I remember when I decided to become a criminal profiler, my ex at the time, not my ex, he said to me, because I had been a homeschooling mom for all the way through my kids. I homeschooled all three of my kids all the way through. Then I became a medical sign language interpreter. I did that for 10 years at that point in time. And while I was doing the medical sign language interpreting, that's when I started studying criminal profiling and forensics and all that, and psychology and all that stuff. And while I was working at the hospital as an interpreter, I did a lot of work in the psychiatric ward. I did work. I saw a massive amount of trauma. I saw people who were shot, stabbed. I worked with rape victims. So, I mean, I had this huge hands-on training, which people don't seem to understand. That, yes, I was a medical sign language interpreter, but I don't think I could have gotten a better training ground than working in the ER and the psych wards and working with, I worked with a lot of psychopaths, interpreting for them. So I got to see things that most people wouldn't see. Even students who were going to school, like he thinks, oh, well, they're going to school and they're going to see this. I saw way more, I think, in many ways, because they didn't even suspect me as learning anything. I was just the interpreter. But that just interpreter was like a fly on the wall to hours and hours of what was going on in the hospital, in the psych ward, with the psychopath that I was interpreting for. I got to see stuff. I got to see them lie to doctors. As soon as a doctor walked out, they just changed their whole demeanor and lie. And I knew they were lying because I could see it happening. The doctor had no clue, but I knew they were lying because they changed as soon as the doctor walked out of the room. They're like that. And then they weren't pretending anymore. So I got to see stuff. It was absolutely amazing. So that was one of the ways that I got my training. But, all right, so when I decided I wanted to be a criminal profiler, I told my husband at the time, I said, I'm going to become a criminal profiler. And he laughed at me. And he said, come on now, you were a homeschooling mom and you're a medical sign language interpreter. How the hell do you think you haven't been a detective? And how do you think you're going to become a criminal profiler? That's grandiose thinking, right? And I had to admit, he was not unreasonable. I'm like, okay. I didn't fault him for that thought, but I said, well, let me and let me see if I can do it. And I went ahead and I did it. So did I have grandiose thinking, or did I have confidence? Or did I have hope that maybe it would work out? So Pater Madsen, he had great ideas. Some of them worked out, some of them didn't. But there are people who achieve things that are unbelievable. I mean, way more than I could ever achieve, because they were able to think past what normal people would think. So sometimes it's hard to tell what's grandiose and what isn't. When you're dealing with a lot of psychopaths, their grandiose thinking goes like this. I worked with the CIA when they didn't. I was a Navy SEAL when they weren't. A lot of grandiose thinking is lying. There's the difference. They're lying about things as far as the grandioseness goes. So glib and superficial, also tricky because a higher level of psychopathy, when I say that, more educated, has had more experience working, being around people with money, people with education, all that stuff, they can be more glib and superficial than people perhaps who are from rougher neighborhoods, who don't have the education or the interaction with certain kinds of people. And so they may be not as smooth, shall we say. So sometimes people like him try to separate a psychopath and a sociopath by saying a psychopath is able to do this and a sociopath can't do these things. Well, that doesn't mean they're both not psychopaths. It's just one has more education and maybe more training in how to be in part of society. Doesn't mean he has any respect for society. It just means that. Then the same thing on the other side of the symptoms. Social deviance, impulsive, poor behavior controls, need for excitement, lack of responsibility, early behavior problems, and adult antisocial behavior. And that's a more of a questionable area, again, because those who grow up in situations where their homes are a wreck, they're having problems with money, finances. They're being maybe sexually assaulted as children. Their parents are criminals themselves. They may have more likelihood to have all of these things. People who grow up in a little bit better circumstances may still be impulsive, but they may be able to do it better. They may have some behavioral controls which aren't good, which you have to really delve into their history to find that. They still may need excitement. Lack of responsibility, maybe they get away with not being as responsible because they have money or people they can use. Don't know. Some have early behavior problems, sure, but people not necessarily recognize them. And some people, they have adult antisocial behavior, but again, like with when we look back at Pater Madsen, people worked with him and didn't see it, but I'm going to show you how it was there. But people don't see things a lot of times when the person they're around is somebody they look up to or gives them opportunities or is exciting. That's why a lot of people get away with psychopathy in Hollywood, in politics, religion, not because people are stupid, but that when the person is presenting themselves as they are the one who you would look up to. You look up to a pastor. You look up to a movie star. You look up to a person who's just become governor of your state. These are things which most of us can't achieve. So we're like, oh, wow, and then they sound smart. They're very good at what manipulating and saying things. So you follow them. And that's how Jim Jones ended up with a whole bunch of people that he killed off. That's how it works. So when you when you try to separate psychopathy and sociopathy as into two separate groups, I think it's nonsense. I think it's psychopathy with some people have better education and better opportunities in life to be able to cleverly meld their psychopathy into things that people don't realize that they're getting screwed over. They figure it out later sometimes, and so I'm going to go through some of those people who've gotten away with it. Now, when we look, let's go back to Das here. Okay, let's look at some things Das said, which I just find stunning for a person who's in his field, shall we say. All right. Here, let's go here. Here's just a few things he said. A psychopath. So he had these things he did. So he did, this is what's wrong about what Dr. Grande got wrong about Chris Watts. And then he says, he's got a psychopathy checklist. That's what I've showed. He explains the differences between a psychopath and a sociopath. All right. What are the differences? I got to find this. That's, hold on a second. Hold on, what I do to it. You know me, I lose something every time I do this. I do. Okay. Okay, here we go. I just find it. Oh, that's him talking. Hold on. I want to find the one spot, and of course, they don't allow you to do this so easily on. Hold on, you're gonna hear his voice again. Hold on. Yes, I hear you, Dr. Das. Okay. I want to read you from the transcript, and let me find out where it is in the transcript. Okay. Differences. All right, here's the differences. A difference, the major difference, he says, between a psychopath and a sociopath is the certain abilities to manipulate. A psychopath can pretend to care, whereas a sociopath doesn't even bother. Okay. A psychopath may appear to function quite highly. So now he's saying, get this, because you're going to be amazed what he says then about Chris Watts. Because he says Chris Watts is not a psychopath. He's saying that a psychopath is someone who can fake stuff really, really well. He says a sociopath often lives on the fringes of society. So he's saying psychopaths can have good jobs, have good careers, have wives and children, whereas a sociopath lives on the fringes of society. I have no idea where he gets this crap from. I really don't. A psychopath will pretend to try and comfort you, whereas a sociopath goes, yeah, I don't care. All right. A psychopath might have a family. He might have relationships. He might have a decent career. He might be on your bowling team. He might come across as a nice guy, but he will stab you in the back to get that promotion. Whereas a sociopath lives on the fringes of society. He's like a career criminal, and he's proud of it. That is such nonsense. He's just basically talking about low-life criminals who are psychopaths who live low lives. You know what I mean? The major... Okay, basically that's it. He says a psychopath can have a career, a family, be very smart, do everything cleverly. And a sociopath has a low life who exhibits the same things, but he can't keep his life together. Now, what does he say about Chris Watts? Let me find it. He says about Chris Watts. This is on the Chris. Okay, so on his other show, which he does, not that one, what's wrong about what Grande said about Chris Watts? He says, a psychopath isn't somebody who puts time in and effort to build up a career or looks toward the future. What? Somebody see a problem here? Yes, I'm trying to be politically correct. I'm glad you read Samanow's book. It is brilliant. Samanow is one of my favorite people of all time. What did you just see the difference? Let me go back here for a second. I want you to actually hear him say this. Where is it? All right. Just want to put this up here again. Okay, let's listen to this. Let me see if I can get to this point. I'm going to move this over here to the, I hope I can hear this because I want you to hear this.
Have relationships. He might have a decent career. He might be on your bowling team. You might come across as a nice guy, but he will stab you in the back to get that promotion. Whereas the sociopath lives on the fringes of society. He's like a career criminal and he's proud of it.
So let's, one more time. What does he say about a psychopath?
Giving your ex-girlfriend a foot massage, and that is not cool.
Don't ignore that.
Psychopath might have family, he might have relationships, he might have a decent career.
You heard that, right? And yet, when it comes down to Chris Watts, who had a family, a decent career, and all that, he then says this. I think I want you to hear this. Hold on a second. I'm going to pull this up so I can see where he goes after. Okay. I know where it is now, so I'll have to find it here. Okay, let me put in Dr. Grande so I can get this one. Okay. Now I want you to listen to what he says here. Hold on a second. I want to find the exact spot. I got to locate it. It is at 1444. Okay, hold on. I want 1444 here. All right, let me find it. In the transcript, 1444. All right. This is what he says about Chris Watts. Hold on. Listen to this.
And a psychopath isn't somebody who puts time in and effort in to build up a career or looks towards the future. And what?
A psychopath isn't somebody who has a career. He doesn't put the time and effort in to build up a career or look toward the future. Chris Watts did all of those things. You just said in your other video, Dr. Das, that a psychopath was somebody who could have a career and be well-respected in the community and do all of those things. Now you're saying a psychopath isn't a person who does that. Can you make up your mind? He's saying two opposite things about psychopathy. Yes, it's very contradictory. I can't even fathom how you can say one thing about psychopaths and then say something else about psychopaths. Which one is it? You said sociopaths were the ones who couldn't pull a career together. But then you're saying psychopaths could. But now you're saying Chris Watts can't be a psychopath because he has a career. Now get this one. He also says this. He might have some psychopathic personality characteristics on that day, but those are not lifelong traits. What? Okay, just so you can hear it from the horse's mouth. I couldn't believe it that he said this. I mean, I'm like, what in the world are you talking about? Here we go. All right, I'm moving this over to this thing so you can hear it. That's the spot.
So he might have had some psychopathic personality characteristics on that day, but those are not lifelong traits. Right, moving on. Dr.
What? What? What are you, a psychopath for a day? Do you get an award for that? I'm just a psychopath for a day. I think wasn't there a television show, Psychopath for the Day? Get out of here. Nobody has psychopathic traits for a day. He murdered his wife and pregnant wife, 2 little kids, because he got tired of them. Dr. Grande went through all of those things. I also did a show on Chris Watts, so I'll try to remember to link both of them below. We both think the same thing. That guy has those kind of traits that are part of his personality. And let's talk about, let's see who else has those kind of traits. Let's see, Scott Peterson. Scott Peterson had a career, everything was going fine, and he offs his wife, his pregnant wife, because he doesn't want to be a daddy and be stuck in a marital situation. He's got his new flame. Same thing as Chris Watts. How about Jeffrey McDonald? Who did he off? His wife and 2 little kids. Why? Because he got tired of being a husband and a daddy, and he wanted freedom. All of these behaved the exact same way. All of them had good lives. Jeffrey McDonald had a great career. Scott Peterson was doing fine. Chris Watts was doing fine. They're psychopaths, Dr. Das. What the heck are you talking about? They have psychopathic traits for a day? Are you insane? I mean, it makes... What the heck? It's exactly right. I was stunned when I heard this stuff. I'm like, how do you come up with this stuff? That makes 0 sense. Is it just because you hate Dr. Grande being able to have a channel that's better than yours? Because you don't consider him learned enough in psychology, and you are? Because you... So anyway, he says this. This is something else that Dr. Das says. By the way, I'm not victim blaming. By the way, I don't think Shannon did anything wrong. I'm just saying that when you look at Chris Watts' perspective, it's not that of a psychopath. So Chris Watts made an impulsive decision in the context of an argument. He claims, now Chris Watts, mind you, claims that he came home and he had sex with his wife, and then they woke up and she annoyed him and said basically, the marriage was a mess and the kids, he wasn't going to get the kids or something. He makes up some crap because she's dead. She can't say what was true, and he even admits he might be lying. So he claims that this idea, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard too, that there was an implant to his head, implanting. Let me find what that's called, because I thought it was dumb. Thought insertion. So Chris Watts says, I woke up, everything was fine, I was normal, and then she pissed me off. So she inserted these thoughts into my head that I'm losing control of my life, I'm going to lose everything. So therefore, I killed her and the kids. And he said, oh, well, he didn't even talk about thought insertion, so he's not a real psychologist. I get so annoyed when people say that, you do a video and somebody says, why didn't you talk about this? Well, because it's a video. It's not a lifelong achievement here. I'm not writing a book of 500 pages in it. It's a short video. You miss certain things. You don't get to certain things. You have to pick out the more important things. He didn't mention thought insertion, so that makes him a bum, So Chris Watts is lying anyway. So, I mean, the thought insertion is this. A person experiencing the thought insertion delusion will not necessarily know where the thought is coming from, but makes a distinction between their own thoughts and those inserted into their minds. It's like, I wouldn't have thought about killing my wife and children until, I don't know, an alien put that into my head. So he goes on and he says, let me find the remainder of what he said here, because it was so stupid. So Chris Watts made an impulsive decision because I guess some thought insertion in the context of an argument and getting enraged as to why he made the decision. I don't think anybody can really answer that question. All I can say, it's not related to mental illness or a mental disorder. I'm sorry, Dr. Das, if you don't know that's a psychopath, and a psychopath, Chris Watts is a 100% psychopath. He determined he was tired of being a father and a husband to her. He wanted his free life and his new honey. If you don't know, that's exactly what a psychopath does. Chris Coleman murdered his whole family to go run off with a stripper. Scott Peterson murdered his pregnant wife to run off with whatever her name is. This is Jeffrey McDonald, same thing. If you don't understand that, I don't understand what psychology you understand. And I will give Dr. Grande way more kudos for what he said than this nonsense that you're saying. So you want to have a beef with him, you're going to have a beef with me, you can call me an unqualified person as well. But if you don't know that's what a psychopath is, I just don't understand it. Now, you also talk about, when you say that, this is so convoluted, I can't even fathom it. So on one hand, you say, you talk about psychopaths who have things going for them. They have things, that they can't be psychopaths if they have a career and a family. Rex, good old Long Island serial killer dude. He had a family. Let's see what else we got here. Dennis Rader. He had a family, he had a job. Colonel Russell Williams. He was a colonel in the Air Force in Canada. He was a serial killer. So again, what the hell are you talking about? There are simply serial killers who are lowlifes, and there are serial killers who, quite frankly, have done quite well in life. And I usually separate those two by, I don't believe in I'm not so fond, let's put it that way, of the FBI methodology of saying that a person is, they either are, I always forget this, I don't know why, because I just don't like it. God, somebody help me out here. I always forget it. Okay, it's not Alzheimer's. I swear to God, it isn't. I just have a block against it because I think it's not what I like. I'm gonna have to pull it up now. It's sad. The serial killer designation. I swear to God, I've done this every show I do on this, and I just don't know what classification of them, and not the somebody help me out here. Oh, thank you. I am the disorganized one. I have this block against organized, disorganized, because I don't agree with it. Their theory on this, they have organized, disorganized, and they have mixed. Okay, so organized is the person who essentially is more ordered in their life and plans better. Yes, and disorganized is kind of like me, and so they just jump out of the woods and whack you over the head, and their life is, they're more disorganized in their planning and all that. And then you have mixed when you can't figure it out, when they're just sort of in the middle. And sometimes they're more disorganized and sometimes more organized. So it's one of these vaguish things. I believe in fast and slow. Fast and slow makes more sense to me because a serial killer who acts in a fast method doesn't do a great deal of planning, and his excitement is the thrill of the quick kill. And for the slow guy, he's the guy that wants to bring somebody back and put him in their basement, in a dungeon, tie them to a wall and torture them. There's a slow level to that. And they have to be, in theory, more organized to accomplish that than does a person who does a fast one, which is, you don't need so much work. So I would be the fast person that jumps out and whacks you over the head. That would be me. So, and then there's those that are kind of in the middle. But the difference between the fast and slow, in my opinion, is more the what they get out of it. The guy who does it fast will be mocked by the slow guy because the slow guy says, "You just kill. What thrill can you possibly get? Because you're done in 5 minutes." You know what I mean? What do you get? You whacked her over the head, you raped her in 5 minutes, and it's over. It's like you wasted her, and not wasted because killed, but wasted the enjoyment you should be getting out of it. Because I'm slow, so I put her in the basement and I torture her for a long time, and I get much more of a thrill than you do. And the fast guy goes, "You're a sick MFer," because look, I don't do those nasty things to women. I just quickly rape and kill them. You do horrible things to them. I don't get a kick out of that. So they have this psychological difference in what they do. But interestingly enough, it is true that the more what he would call, I don't know what he'd call anything anymore, but a person who tends to be more educated, tends to be more solid in life, tends to have the family and all that, tends to be the slower type. In other words, if they've been able to achieve some control over putting their lives together, they tend to want to have more of a control over the crime itself and more of a thrill over all the different elements of the sexual homicide as it goes along. Whereas a person who's like kind of, can keep a job and, he's pissing people off and he's real, whatever, he tends to do things that are much faster because it's just not, he just wants to get that cheap thrill to get his power and control back. So a person who is failing in society, a psychopath who's failing in society, tries to get their power and control back quickly just to give them that moment of, hey, see, I'm still somebody. Whereas a person who's not so unsuccessful in society doesn't need to do a quick thrill thing. They need to do something that really ratchets it up. So it's a different way of thinking, and that's just my way of thinking, because I just think disorganized is not exactly productive in trying to understand who they are and what they're doing and why they're doing it. So we have people who are highly successful in life to a great extent will then commit crimes that tend to be, especially serial killers like Russell Williams. He had a success in life, and so his crimes were a little bit more involved. And that's true for a number of them. Although you get people like Jeffrey Dahmer, who wasn't much of a success in life. So maybe he's mixed, you know what I mean? Because he did lure people back and spend a lot of time with them and do things to them and then keep them around for his own pleasure. And he didn't really knock them off that quick. Well, he incapacitated them quickly. He just kept them around. So a lot of it is very, when you're trying to get inside the mind of a serial killer or a psychopath, it's very difficult because they all have their own fantasies about how they want things to go. But to say just because somebody has a career or was able to get up in the morning and make coffee, and therefore they can't be a psychopath. I have no clue how he thinks Chris Watts isn't a psychopath. It just drives me nuts. So if we go to the case that we're in here, that was the real reason why you came here, maybe. If we go back to this case, we have to say, what the heck? Here is a guy who's highly successful, all the things that, he's got the career, he's got people who think he's amazing. He's got television people after him. I mean, he's got everything going for him. He's got what seems to be great plans, except he's a psychopath, in my opinion. He is manipulative. I don't know how much he lies, but I'm going to say he lies a lot, but in ways that people didn't catch on to. And so he had fantasies, obviously, of a sexual homicide he had for a really long time. But I want to show you some of the things that that he said and that the people said after this happened. She asked herself, she's the one that, she was very close to him. She was probably the one who was going to kill, that she was supposed to go on the next ride with him on the submarine. She said, were there signs I didn't notice? Well, yes, there were. So one day she said, I can't get myself together. Why don't you just, why don't you do something that'll make me really do stuff? And she was playing a little bit of a sexual game with him, I think, or kind of a crazy game. And he started saying things like this. Okay, in order to get you to do what you got to do, I'm going to say you got to be bound in the Nautilus. I bind you to pierce you with a skewer. Then the pocket knife comes forth. I'm looking at your throat. Where's the pulse? I have a murder plan ready, which is a great pleasure. And he says this to her. We can go for fun in submarine tomorrow. She's so nice right now. And she says, okay, that's very nice. And then she said this. After that, on the show, she says it was Kim who insisted on doing it that night. So she would have gone with him the next day, but Kim went with him that same day. So she ended up getting murdered. And she wonders whether this woman was the one who was going to get murdered. And I think she probably was, because she was willing to go with him and he probably would have done the same thing to her. So she's really pretty freaked out that, I really trusted this guy. Why didn't I see the signs when he said creepy things like that? But people, when they start allowing for creepiness, when people in relationships, when they're married, ignore what their husbands or wives are saying that are creepy, because it's always there. I'm sure Scott Peterson said some stuff to his wife, and Chris Watts said some stuff to his wife that were creepy, but they couldn't believe that they ever meant what they ended up meaning. And so he's playing this kind of little creepy game with her, and she's thinking they're just being funny. Not so funny, but she didn't realize that because she's assuming it's being funny, and she doesn't look at that and think that's a creepy thing for anybody to say. And this is one of his best friends that worked with him. I think this is really interesting. He said, "The Peter I knew for 10 years, the Peter that went on the submarine on August 10th and came up on August 11th, that's two different people. I find it scary that we as human beings can have this duality in us." Oh, sorry. Where'd that one go that I want to add in? Okay, wait a minute. "I find it equally scary that I didn't see it. The only consolation I have here is that nobody else saw it as well." So he's saying this guy had like seemingly two different personalities, but they all bought into the personality he was displaying, and they didn't see all the creepy stuff. But looking back, they're seeing more and more of it. And so if you go through this video, this documentary, you'll see that they're going, he did do this and he did do that. But, they were so taken by the things that were great about him and their participation in some great thing. So the same thing as when people are married. You marry somebody. I think Scott Peterson is a pretty handsome fellow. I think Chris Watts is a pretty good looking fellow. So, you're a woman, you meet him when you're young, and oh my God, this guy's really nice. You meet them, then you make love with them. So now you're in bed with them and you're feeling that connection. And then you have a child together. And so along the way, when you start seeing some things that are creepy or manipulative, or that he lies and does this and that, it's hard to take those things and put it together with the person you thought you married, the person that you thought loved you, that you love and that loves you. And so people get very confused in their minds, and they block out a lot of the things that are off. And they go with what is good because they think that's because they're part of that relationship. And they just, so they focus on the good. And so his friend is saying, I didn't see it. I didn't see it at all. Now, this thing, where is it? Okay, let's see if I can get why is this messed up now? That's really weird. Okay, I'm trying to figure out where this starts. Okay, I might start here. This is something that Pater Madsen said during the filming, for whatever reasons, I'm not quite sure. He says, "Psychopaths exist among us. Human predators that walk around and grab people and use them and throw them out, used, and maybe stalk them afterwards, and so on. There have been people who've been under his spell and have no regard, and the psychopath has no regard for anyone else. And he will try really to punish those people who have been under his spell. Because basically what he's saying here is because he doesn't have respect for them. You dumbasses. He will try to punish them by stalking them afterwards, by talking badly about them, all of these things. There is a possibility that you simply come upon a human predator. And I wouldn't know. Because do the psychopath knows that he's a psychopath? I'm not sure. Now, I don't know the entire context of this conversation this is in the documentary. But he is actually saying, am I a psychopath? And he's describing a psychopath. He says, well, does a psychopath know he's a psychopath? I don't know. Do you? Yeah. He had obviously some idea that he was manipulating people, that he was controlling them, and he had no respect for them, no empathy for them. But he was a great actor. He's always smiling in front of them, hugging people, doing all those things. But meanwhile, in private, he's watching videos of women being brutally murdered and tortured, and he's getting a big fat thrill out of it. And what he wants is a chance to do that too. And there's this point, I don't know what he got to in life, where the impulsiveness that they talk about sometimes is that you take a Chris Watts, you take a Scott Peterson. We're talking about, in this case, he would be a serial killer. So we're not talking about the other guys are they're family annihilators. Or wife killers, or whatever you want to call them. He's actually a serial killer. And we don't even know if he killed women before this. We just have no idea. He might have. We just never figured out who he did. Or if he got away with this, what he'd do in the future. We don't know. But the fact is that what do we call impulsiveness? And I want to point out one of the things I think is one of the most important comments on that, which is, again, Stanton Salmon. He wrote this book called The Myth of Out of Character Crime. And he says there is no such thing. And I 100% agree with this. And I did a show once where somebody said, oh, this woman did whatever she did. It was out of character. And I said, no, it's not. There's nothing ever out of character, because people only do what they want to do. They may have had it suppressed. They may have not acted on it yet, but it's going to be something that they would be willing to do. And I want to point out the, let me find this here. Just want to read a little bit what Salmon was basically saying. The main proposition of this author, a forensic psychologist, is that no such thing as a crime being committed out of character. His argument is that the character capable of committing the crime was always there, even though it may not have been readily perceived. So his character was already a psychopath. His desires, these fantasies, were already there. They just weren't perceived. Chris Watts, Dr. Das, already had that in him, already had that psychopathic nature. And when it got to a point where he wasn't pleased with his life, he took action. And it wasn't out of character. It wasn't a one day's worth of psychopathic traits. Get out of here. It's a lifelong psychopathic harboring of those traits. The author then backs up the statement by examining a number of crimes where everybody thought the crime was out of character. However, in each case, a detailed analysis of the facts showed that was not to be the case. So the problem, of course, was to get the facts as opposed to the mirage the criminal wanted the world to see. And this is the problem. There is a mirage. He puts out what he wants people to see. So does Scott Peterson, who says, I didn't kill Lacey. Chris Watt, whatever they're doing, they want you to see this. And they manipulate you into seeing what they want you to see, because they don't want you to see who they truly are. So it says here, the policy seems to be, if you can get the criminal to talk long enough, sooner or later clues will slip out, and they can be that is true, or that people will finally confront that person and say, no, that's not what you said. Other people, information will start coming out, and it has in all of these cases, that the person said this or they did that. So the evidence is there. It's just sometimes you have to dig it up. And I don't think Das did enough anything to dig up that Chris Watts is a psychopath. He also says the McCanns are innocent. What? So it's just the McCanns are innocent. Okay, dude, where are you coming up with that? If you're going to make that statement, you ought to support it with evidence, or didn't you bother? So he does a lot of this kind of stuff, as far as I can see, which is saying whatever he feels like saying about somebody without actually doing the research, which is odd to me, because, I mean, isn't he the one that's saying that's what the training is all about, is doing the, the other thing. Dr. Downs will say that, Dr. Grandi says, hey, I'm not diagnosing here. And then he kind of, gives his opinion. So, but what he's saying is, I can't diagnose. I can't diagnose people either. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't diagnose, but I will say my opinion is they appear to be a psychopath. Now, Dr. Das, being a forensic psychiatrist, absolutely knows the rule is you can't diagnose anybody unless you have worked with them. You have spent time going, actually studying, talking to them. You're diagnosing them because they're in front of you. He's never talked to Chris Watts. So how is he diagnosing Chris Watts as not a psychopath when he hasn't spent any time in actual, therapy, or, he hasn't been hired to do so. So he spent hours and hours and hours with this guy. So he's actually violating his own, what they say, a psychiatrist should never diagnose unless they actually have spent that time with the person. So he's like, I've never seen something so convoluted in my life where somebody goes off on this and can't keep their story, can't keep their own they can't keep their, I don't want to put this, I'm trying to think of a nice way to put this. Okay. He can't keep his own he can't keep his definition straight. See, when you have him, they're two separate they're in conflict. His own definitions are in conflict. And then he tosses them on to a person that he's never actually spent time with and does a diagnosis, which he shouldn't be doing, and then blames another person for doing diagnosis when the guy's not doing a diagnosis. It's just crazy to me. The whole thing is absolutely nuts. But when I looked at this stuff, I realized how many people, when they want to say somebody's not a psychopath, and I know people think that Scott Peterson is innocent and Chris Watts is innocent, and they want to blame his girlfriend for doing things that she didn't do. They want to blame Shannon. I mean, they do all kinds of crazy crap. But these are not people who are professionals. But then we have professionals doing the same thing. It's like, if you don't want to actually look at the information and understand that in the background of people like this, and in the minds of people like this, there's a lot of things you just do not see. And that's why psychopathy works. And that's why you can have somebody who appears to be good for a really long portion of time, and then you find out something horrific about them, that they've actually killed 20 people, or you trusted them, like Jim Jones. Oh, you trusted him, you thought he cared, and then you find out he's a mass murderer. I mean, there's things that a psychopath will do that it's something we're so unaccustomed to that we can't actually fathom it. But if you're a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a criminal profiler, you damn well should be able to fathom it. That's all I can say. I mean, if you've been around enough, and Dr. Dash, you have worked in therapy, in mental hospital, psychiatric hospital. You've worked with them. That's where you do your work. If you haven't figured out by now what Stanton Samanow knows, what I know, and even what Dr. Grande knows, something wrong there. There's something seriously wrong if you do not know what a psychopath is. I'm just blown away by that. This guy, definitely a psychopath. Very, very dangerous person. And I do believe he either committed crimes before or would gone on to commit more crimes. This is a sexual psychopath, a suspected serial killer, possible serial killer. And he didn't have a bad hair day. In other words, this is exactly what Das is saying. So Chris Watts had a bad hair day. He's a great guy till he got this thought implanted in his head that his wife was going to take away what he had. So he just decided to kill everybody and run off with his girlfriend and still act like a psychopath. And this guy, he was this great entrepreneur, treated everybody wonderfully. But bad hair day, decided, well, I think I'd really like to take her down into my submarine and sexually assault her and chop her up and torture her. That'll be fun. But tomorrow it'll be all, will tomorrow be normal? They did say when he came back, he talked to people like nothing had happened. He spoke to people right before, and they said it sounded like he was a regular guy right before he did this, and they sound like a regular guy right after he did this. That's what a psychopath does. Serial killers have been known to kill somebody on the way to work, sexually assault and murder a woman on the way to work, and then 30 minutes later, they walk into work, they go, hey, good morning, everybody, and they get themselves a cup of coffee. Or they kill a woman, and then they pick up pizza on their way home and walk into the house and go, hi, hon, hi, kids, look, brought you a pizza. This is what they'll do. This is psychopathy. Dr. Das, if you don't get that, I'm just blown away by it. I was really shocked because I haven't seen this kind of nonsense. So again, if you want to have a beef with Dr. Grande over and over and over again, because you think that he doesn't have the right to diagnose, apparently you don't have that right either. And, add me to your beefs. I don't mind because I stand with him. Okay, let me look at some of your comments. It's a crazy thing. He sounds like he's coming to the conclusion he's a psychopath himself, so now he's changing the definition. Are you talking about Dr. Das? I'm not sure there. Are you talking about Pater Madsen? Seems like Pater Madsen wanted to play God, his rockets, his submarines. Yes. I think that's very good, Liz. I think that's true. He always wanted something huge, something big. He wanted it to be the master of all of this. I think you're correct. I think his need for excitement that psychopaths do need. They want that stimulation that they can't often get in regular life. Sometimes regular life can be boring. And then it gets frustrating because you keep ratcheting. It's like an addiction. You're ratcheting up the level and you want more and more excitement. And somebody who, like him, yeah, I think you're right. I think he does want to play God. I think he wants to be, and he said he wanted to be the greatest. He does say that. So you're quite right about that. Harper says his big launch, which he had to cancel, was supposed to be the day after the murder. So I wonder if in anticipation of the launch, he needed another thrill. That's an interesting thought. Yeah, he probably does not like not getting what he wants to get. You know what I'm saying? That psychopaths are very, very annoyed by stuff like that, especially very bright psychopaths. It's an insult to themselves. It's just a bloody insult. So don't do that. You said yes, Dr. Das. I'm not going to diagnose Dr. Das, so I won't do it. But yeah, that's interesting fellow. There's a kind of that kind of line. I've seen it with profiling too. That sometimes I've wondered about profilers. For the same reason. It's like some people wonder that about me. I've been called a psychopath before. he might be adding that to his thing on me too. No, there's this about, yes, there was a point where Harper's right that he's referring to his competition, the one he worked with before, but inadvertently described himself. So yes, he worked with this company, and basically he thinks they screwed him. So he has hatred for that company and the guy who runs it. And but yeah, was he describing that person or is he describing himself? Considering that he ended up being this the guy that raped and murdered a woman, I'm gonna say you need to look in that mirror, Well, okay, about the submarine building. He wanted to, I think, do a lot of experimental things that were slightly different, and he wanted to be able to control the creation, which there's an issue between grandiose thinking and grand thinking. I mean, I'll use the term grand thinking and grandiose thinking. Grand thinking is you feel like, for me, for example, when I got into criminal profiling, I was not happy with the analysis I got from a certain police department on a case. And then I started reading up on it and started studying FBI stuff. And I wasn't too pleased with what I saw there either. And yet there were people out there, Dr. Stanton Samanow, for example, who I just really appreciate what they had to say. There are detectives who I thought were fantastic detectives. I have some favorite books written by detectives who did, I thought, great crime scene analysis, great profiling. And I saw that one of the problems was that profiling was being misused in my opinion, by the FBI as some kind of almost psychic thing. Whereas detectives are the real profilers, because when you get a case as a detective, you have to analyze the crime scene evidence and the behavioral evidence and the forensic evidence. That's your job. Only problem is most detectives don't get any training. That's the way it works. You're a street cop, and then you just move up into being a detective. Nobody goes to detective school, which I want them to have. I think everybody should go get training, not FBI training, but reasonable, rational training, practical training on how to analyze these things in a way that doesn't take 700 years to do it, because you got the first 48. And either your team has to be able to do it, or you need to have a real deductive criminal profiler in your department who can do some of this work while you're running around doing interviewing. I wanted to see a change because I didn't think things were working correctly. And that's how I got a grand idea. Not that I've accomplished it, mind you, because it's become very difficult to move forward with this kind of thing. I still hope to achieve that before I kick off this planet. I'm running out of time. But I had a grand idea. I don't think it's grandiose, because one thing about a difference between a grand idea and a grandiose idea is that grandiose thinking is, I can accomplish this and there's no question about it. Or I am this and there's no question about it. A grand thinking is, I hope to accomplish this. It's a great idea. I want to put everything I have into this, and I hope it can accomplish it. That's kind of the difference. So when I started studying criminal profiling and wanted to do that and wanted to change some things in the field, and I'm still working on that to this day, it's a grand idea. But I never had I didn't have an illusion that I was somehow so superhuman that nothing could stop me. There's no question I'm going to make it there. I mean, I always had a sense of humor about it all, going, well, we'll see what happens. So he has some grand thinking. I don't know that it was grandiose, because he accomplished many of the things he was trying to do and wanted to achieve and offer different ways of doing things. I think all the stuff he was doing was very cool. That's what's so sad about it. I mean, it was crushing to the people who worked with him, because they really loved his ideas. It was very exciting. And that's how lots of things start. You know, when you think about people in computers and all that stuff, they have some grand thinking that's really crazy, sort of. But then now we have an entire computer and a phone, which used to be in a whole room. And, you know, the things that happen today because of those people with grand thinking. So I don't consider that grandiose thinking. When a psychopath thinks grandiosely, then the problem there is that he doesn't care about any level of realism, and he also just, a lot of times it's just fantastical. It's a fantasy as opposed to being a reality. As I say, a lot of times it's just lies about, I'm a famous actor when you're not a famous actor. Just stuff that just made up lies so that they look better than they are. So totally grandiose stuff. It's just lying about stuff. So it's a little different. What? She got a creepy photo of a doll with a blank. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to go. I really don't want to get into these cases, because, again, one of the problems I have is a lot of times I don't even know if it's true. I honestly, because I haven't done anything on that case in a long time, but there's so much stuff out on the internet which is really questionable that I just. He is successful, but has a disorganized personality in some areas. Difficulty planning and organizing. That is true. Okay, that's interesting that you point that out, Harpa. Yeah, there were some people that were saying he had. I think because he was trying to achieve too much, he wasn't planning and organizing as well as he could. Yeah, that's true. So sometimes when people plan real big too, they lose along the way. They get, it's hard to keep all the working parts together, especially when you're, got to understand too, he's dealing with volunteers. I mean, some of that I don't know that I would blame him for. It's the same reason I look disorganized, and probably am, doing YouTube shows. Why is that? Well, because I don't have anybody to help me. I don't have secretaries and assistants, and I don't have a team that does all the videography and gets all the sound perfect. Obviously, I don't look as good as I should. You know what I mean? The lighting's not so great. I can't do these things as well as I might if I had a team. Some of these very glossy YouTube shows you see, it's because there's a huge team behind it. People who are very, very capable of doing things. If I said, look, I want you to take what Dr. Das said, and I want you to pull out those particular words, and I have to make sure it's okay on YouTube, because, again, there's all these things whether YouTube accepts certain things. I want you to pull them out. I want you to make videos of them. I'm not going to do live, because that would be a mess, because live is always, it's you can't be fancier that fancy with live. But let's say I'm just doing a video on this whole thing. Then I would have somebody, first of all, I could retake over and over again. It's like, oh, I screwed that up. Like when I couldn't remember organize and disorganize. If I did all videos, you would never see me. Well, I don't even edit my videos, but if I were doing it properly, because I had the energy to do it, you would never hear me screw that up. I would say, and then I'll just organize and disorganize. As a matter of fact, when I do my videos I'm doing this detective school thing I'm trying to get off, which is going to be on this channel, but I think I will do short videos that are very specific on different issues. You will probably see, although again, they're not going to be edited because I don't edit, I would probably redo it if I couldn't remember organized, disorganized. I would stop and go, crap. And I'd start over again doing that. And then when you saw it, you go, oh, Pat Brown is, she got all her words in order and she doesn't screw up, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's because I did this show over 5 times. And then if I had money, I get people to insert things. I get fancy, all kinds of fancy crap. But then I'd have to pay people, and I don't make them. I make about minimum wage on YouTube. That's what I'm making right now, minimum wage. And so if I had to pay people, I'd be making nothing because I wouldn't want to pay them minimum wage. So I can't necessarily blame him. It's how organized, disorganized was he, considering how, first of all, he's got that mind that runs really fast. So people who, he's more of a stream of consciousness kind of creator, which is also me. I'm more of a stream of consciousness type person. I write that way. I talk that way. That's who I am. Then you get your more slower types, you know, that's say fast and slow, slower types that are appearing to be more organized because their brains work like that. So he, you know, that I don't know that that is anything that proves psychopathy, because I think you can be fast a psychopath that does things fast. You can be one that does things slower and be a psychopath. So that's not so much that, but yeah, but the grandiose thing, I don't know. I think he did have some grandiose thinking, more that not so much that he wanted to do grand things, but that he wanted to be the one who everybody would, you know, rave about, and he'd be this big hero. As he said, he's going to be that or a criminal. Well, he turned out to be a criminal. So, yeah, this is crazy. Not lifelong traits, going back to Dr. Das. Personality disorders are lifelong. Absolutely. You're either a psychopath or you're not. And that pretty much is already there by the time you're 5 years old. So you're going to be a psychopath all your life. How you're going to handle the psychopathy, how other people are going to handle the psychopathy, that all depends. And some are more successful at hiding their psychopathy than others. But that doesn't mean you're not one. So Chris Watts, you don't wake up one day and say, you know, I think I want to murder my wife and kids. That's not something that's on the mind of anybody except a psychopath. So I'm just blown away how Dr. Doskin even claimed that guy's not a psychopath. Good God Almighty. Just blows me away. I like disorganized people. Well, you know, I want them organized when they're doing something that I need organized, right? You know, like that's why I hire people to clean my house. The woman who comes and does it right now, she's so super organized, and I just watch her go through the house, you know, bit by bit, and my house is all pretty and nice. And I'm like, because if I were doing it, I'd do it for 5 minutes and I get distracted, which is why I don't do it myself. Yep, a great hero or a great criminal. Either way, that's the point there being also that great hero or great criminal, he would still be greater than other people. And he is. I mean, he hasn't been forgotten for this horrible crime. And if people consider it such a horrible crime, it's so mind-boggling that it is considered one of the most horrible crimes and most difficult to understand crimes, that a guy like this would commit a crime like that. So in his own mind, he probably did achieve that. And I always understand that as far as a psychopath goes, it's always about him. It does when you think about, does he care about what other people think? No, he only cares about how he views other people thinking. It's kind of confusing, but this is why a mass murderer can go and kill a whole bunch of children in school, get killed while he's in there. And you say, well, what's the point then? Because, you know, I said, well, it's because because of the great publicity he's going to get in the news, in all of the media. His name is going to be everywhere. His face is going to be everywhere. It's going to go down in history. And people say, but he won't be around to know that. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. He knows in his own mind that this will happen. In his own mind, he's already playing all the videos in his own head about tomorrow. You know, they're going to be talking about me, my name, my face, you know, and how many kids I managed to kill off. In his own mind, he's already achieved that. That moment has already come for him, even if it hasn't come for the rest of us yet. He's already, that's where the fantasy part comes in. For him, he had a fantasy. Oh, I didn't mention this because I was mostly talking about psychopathy, but he brought the tools on board. It wasn't like she was on board and then he got a thing going for him. You know, she's hot. I just want to attack her. No, he brought a saw on board. He brought pipes on board. To weight down her body, to cut her body up. He brought all that on board with the intent of killing her. So it was a premeditated murder. So in his mind, he was already very excited because he always wanted to do this, you see. And he may have already done it, but for all we know. But he's seen all these videos. He's had that fantasy in his head. He's already gone through that in his head, how it's going to be. He's going to get to do this. And sometimes it can turn out not to be as good as he thought it was going to be, but still in his own head, this is a great thing he's getting to do. And so the rest of the world, whatever they actually think in the long run, isn't as important as what he thinks of himself. Because when you come right down to it, he's the only person that matters. He's his own critic, So he will, write a 5-star review on the murder, And that's why you can see a lot of psychopaths when they're in prison. They do very well in prison for the most part because they're able to then rework their brain into thinking, okay, well, I'm going to be the coolest guy in prison, or I'm going to be famous with the girls. He got married. A stupid woman married him, by the way. This woman, where is she? Yeah, this woman married him. Jenny Kirpin. She said, "Oh, you're demonizing this guy." Yeah, because he raped and murdered a woman, you idiot. Anyway, who knows what her thing was? Probably another psychopath. And she did eventually divorce him, but it was kind of funny because apparently they decided this was unacceptable, that in Denmark that a killer like this could get married, date and marry in prison. So they came forth to try to stop that, which I wish the U.S. would stop everywhere. All the dating sites coming out of the prisons is disgusting to me. If you commit a crime, do your time. When you get out, you can think about dating, but I don't think you should have access to dating sites while you're in prison. And they stand in front of these the posters that got put behind somebody. Say he's like, you stand in front of it, and it'll be like an ocean, a beach behind him, but it's actually done in prison. So it's like, are these days? I'm not quite sure how they do it these days. Well, they got all kinds of methodologies now. You can just stick the background behind somebody. So I'm not sure how they do it, but the fact is they're out there dating from prison, and I think that's abominable. And I'm glad to see Denmark is trying to shut that down. I don't know what the result was, but yeah. So the fact that he could even marry a woman while he's in prison is disgusting. And he was very big on the web and on the dating sites, apparently. What a creep! Not total creep. Yeah, I think he would have murdered again. Yes, because serial killers rarely stop unless they have a reason to stop. Because if they like what they're doing, it's like eating Doritos. You don't just eat one, it's like you keep eating them because you like it. Think about this. Generally speaking, it's like sex. Guy goes out and finally gets sex with a woman. Does he want to do it again? Probably, unless it was really a horrifying experience, But if that's your fantasy, what you want is this is exciting to you. You want this experience, and this you've been planning and then you finally get to do it. Yeah, he's going to want to do it again because he obviously got something out of the horror that she went through. The torture of her to him was exciting. He loved that, and he would want to do it again. It is like a drug in the sense that it's something that gives you a great feeling. That's why people, in my opinion, get, quote, addicted to drugs. I think it's more a case of they really liked it too much to not want to do it again. Not so much that your body has to have it, but just that, damn, that was good. I enjoyed that. That made me feel this way, and I loved it, whatever that thing was. So I want to do it again. And if you don't like it, literally, if you don't like it, if you did a drug and you're like, oh my God, that made me feel like garbage, well, then you may not want to do it again. But usually a person who's a sexual psychopath, they're going to go down that road and they're going to stay on that road. So yes, I think that if he'd gotten away with it, he would have done it again. He might have gotten smarter and thought, well, it was stupid of me to do it on my own damn submarine. So because he was hanging around he was involved with fetish stuff and people. So, it would have been much smarter for him to basically pick up a girl off the street, take her someplace and do her in. I mean, I think to him, he had this thing about his world was a submarine. That when he was in the submarine, it was like his like private, like a bubble of sense of his own world. His own world as a god. So maybe that's why he wanted to put the two together. The girl and the submarine is just so awesome, you know. Again, we can't get. I don't waste too much time getting inside of a head of a psychopath because I really don't know. Because it's his fantasy, you know. It's like it's just because somebody likes doing something doesn't mean that like. I mean, I've never had a fantasy of stabbing someone to death. I mean, that hasn't really crossed my mind as something that sounds real exciting. So if I say, why does a guy want to do that to this woman? Why would he want to stab her over and over again? Well, I can tell you just educationally, yes, he gets thrill out of the power and control. He likes to see people suffer because then he is the one causing the suffering and it makes him, I can go on. Do I really know? And of course, if you ask him why he did it, he'll lie to you. So, you know, psychopaths lie, and so you can never believe them. So whatever they tell you is the reason they're thrilled about something or do something, you can't necessarily know that it's the truth. That's why I'm sometimes annoyed when I see FBI profilers go sit in prison and they have these long discussions a lot of times. And they act like they're believing everything the psychopath says. And I'm like, yeah, you know, you got to take all of that with a grain of salt because you just, you know, don't know if it's true or not. And I don't know that it really matters. I'm not one of these people that thinks it really, you know, people ask me, well, have I done interviews with psychopaths and serial killers and stuff in prison? I'm like, I don't have any interest in that. Why? Because what's the point? We've lots of serial killers have been interviewed. Do we need to interview another 50 more of pathological liars? I don't see the point. I want to know how to stop them. I want to know how, to me, the interesting part is, for the most part, the police side of it, which is how can we stop them? Because it's we can do it as a society, we can try to figure out how to prevent creating psychopaths. That's a useful thing for society to figure out. But from my end of it, it's how can we identify a person who's committed a crime, whether it be a serial killer or whether it be a wife killer or just a robbery gone bad or whatever it is. How can we look at the evidence and all of the evidence, again, the forensic evidence and the behavioral evidence and the physical evidence and all of that stuff, and identify who most likely committed the crime so that we can get best avenues of investigation, so we can catch the guy so it doesn't happen again. That guy doesn't go on committing more crimes. In his case, he was so stupid, essentially, for all the brilliance he had, he committed a very poor crime, and therefore he got caught badly. You know, but I always remember one of my favorite cases was out of the Montgomery County, Maryland, and a woman was murdered on a bike path, and Chief, he's the guy that ran the sniper investigation. I'm blanking on his name, but he was once the Montgomery County police chief. And he did something that was so rare because the guy left an impression of a footprint. And instead of keeping that quiet, he actually went public with it and said, this imprint is this size shoe and it's this kind of shoe. And he showed a picture of the kind of tennis shoe it was. And the guy got nervous and ran out the backyard and checked his shoe in the bushes, and somebody saw him do it and they caught the guy. And theoretically, if it was his first murder, that police chief, by going public with that information in a way I think should be done more often, getting the community to hone in on who this guy is, because the guy had huge feet. It's like Jolly Green Giant feet, you know. So it wasn't, he could be identified as a local guy in the area with those size feet, with those tennis shoes. And it happened, and they identified him. He might have gone on once so he messed up on that crime. First crimes often they mess up on, and then they get better and they don't screw up for a while. And then later crimes they get careless because they think they're, you know, invincible, and they screw up again. But in the middle, you can get 10 or 20 women who are murdered. So, you know, it's like, because they caught him right away, how many lives did that police chief save? How many lives? So to me, that's the important thing, rather than let's get into more of his brain. I don't care about his brain. I want to know how to catch the dude, you know, put him away before he hurts other people. And I think most victims, if from beyond the grave, are going to say, I don't care what that guy thought. I wish you had caught him. So Um, yeah, but I know this was a bit of a convoluted video. I just the whole thing. If we don't understand what a basic psychopath is, and we have people out there actually making claims that Chris Watts isn't a psychopath, and and I just don't get it. I really don't get it, and I think it's kind of really sad because if nothing else, women and men who are dating might want to avoid marrying somebody like Chris Watts because they might end up dead. And so if you're going to help people not get involved with those people, that would be useful. But if you're going to sit there and say the guy just had a bad hair day, well, then anybody can have a bad hair day. So hey, it doesn't matter who you marry, how he's just turned a psychopath overnight and he'll be normal back in the morning. Get out of here. I mean, I'm blown away by that. I just don't get it. I just really don't. I'm like, oh my God. So that's why I decided to speak up on this, because I want people to understand that people who do this kind of murdering are psychopaths. They absolutely 100% are psychopaths. It's just, there's no other way to look at it. And so I think the psychiatric world, I think sometimes they spend way too much time making it more confusing than it needs to be. And therefore, it's like, we're the only ones who can ever figure this stuff out, when it needs to be as straightforward as possible. If you're going to save lives, that's what it needs to be. So I'll commend Dr. Grandi on what he said about Chris Watts, and I'll link both of our things below. And I'm sure I'll get the, he says, sure he's going to have a beef with me too. But anyway, those are my thoughts. Yeah, the whole thing was just so crazy. So yeah, but watch that documentary. It was really super fascinating, and I felt very sorry for everybody who was involved, because they suffered into everything that Pater was saying to them. I mean, they believed in him, just like Chris Watts' wife believed in him, and Lacey believed in her husband, and people believe in the people that they're around until it's too late. And it's just really, it's really a shame. But if we had a little bit more knowledge of psychopathy and what to look for, maybe we could save a few people's life. Anyway, that's it, everybody. Again, if you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe. And yeah, and I will see some of you during the week, probably on Thursday, for the hangout. And hopefully it will be a little less convoluted on my end. But again, if you would like to work for free, volunteer for me, do all my work. No, I'm only kidding. I don't have the energy for all that. So I'll just keep on the way I'm keeping on. So that's just me. So I hope you enjoyed this, and check out the documentary. Bye.